With these prone pass-throughs, we're going to go over two different loading options. So the first one's going to be, I'm going to perform this with, this is a broom handle, you can use a stick, you can use a PVC pipe, any fixed object that's not going to move here. Then what I'm going to do is I'm going to set my hands as wide as I comfortably need to. I'm going to go face down on the floor. And if you're like me and you have a big nose, it may be uncomfortable to go to face down, or if you just don't want to put your face on the floor, I would recommend taking a pillow or an ab mat, placing it on your forehead so you don't smush your face. So with your hands in a comfortable position, elbows locked out, face down on the floor, you're going to go through what is a pass-through range of motion here. We're doing this face down because it eliminates a lot of compensations that people run into as they're hitting their sticking point. They tend to overextend their spine and take a lot of the stress off the shoulder joint. So I simply eliminate that problem by putting people face down on the floor. What a couple good reps are going to look like. Elbows locked out, and make sure those elbows stay locked out the entire time. Take note that as I was doing that, the motion was smooth and continuous the entire time. I wasn't rushing it, I wasn't speeding up and slowing down at different points throughout the movement, which is a very common thing I see with people if they're trying to push their range of motion too much too soon with this movement. Common faults with this movement are going to be, first off, breaking at the elbows. So as we're going through the range of motion, we can't keep those elbows locked, so we simply break them to take tension off the shoulder joint. The second's going to be, I always cue, I want the thumb to pinky wrapped around the stick. What's inevitably going to happen if people are working in a range they don't have control over, they're going to start to let the stick slide around the fingers, which is going to be a way to compensate or work around our shoulder joint restrictions. And then lastly is going to be arching or lifting the back up off the floor, kind of like a Superman. What each one of those compensations are going to look like. First one, breaking at the elbows. And that breaking of the elbows can happen on the way towards the back or on the way returning to the starting position. That's the first one. The next one's going to be letting go of the stick. So as you kind of reach that midpoint where most people's sticking points are, they'll start easing off on their tension on the stick. Then lastly is going to be lifting up off the floor. All three of those compensations are typically going to happen at about that halfway mark when the arms are starting to get about in line with your shoulder blades if you're on the floor. So it's going to happen probably right about that point in the movement. So be on the lookout for that, be aware of those things, avoid those things from happening. If you have to go so wide on the stick, you're unable to keep the elbows locked out or keep your fingers wrapped around the stick, another option is to use any sort of band. And really what the band's going to allow us to do is as we're reaching our most restricted point, it's going to allow some give so the band actually moves, as opposed to what's happening is your stick isn't moving, so you're compensating somewhere else. We're able to keep our points of performance, and the band just gives us more range where we need it, and then we can return to the restricted range where we don't need it as much. So same thing applies whether you're using the band or the stick. It just allows us to more comfortably work around our restrictions. So what a couple reps are going to look like. And notice how when I get about halfway through, my arms are allowed to go wider, which is accommodating my lack of shoulder restriction within the movement.